Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. This is Yadi Caro, and in each episode, you will learn a new skill with the help of an expert. This is the final episode of Season 7, and since I work with tech teams and I am currently in a role of supporting an Agile transformation effort in my organization, I wanted to revisit one of the most popular episodes of this podcast. Several months ago, I had the opportunity to interview one of the creators of the Scrum framework, Jeff Sutherland. And Scrum is turning 30 years old, and it's amazing to see how some teams are still discovering this framework. Listen to all the insights about what makes a great team and learn some misconceptions about Agile in this episode. Also, while I will be on a little break of a few weeks, I want to remind you that I will still be communicating with you via social media, particularly LinkedIn, and via my weekly newsletter. Sign up now via hardcoresoftsskillspodcast.com to find out about upcoming Q&As, workshops, and even opportunities to do one-on-one coaching with me. Now, let's listen. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Sutherland.
Glad to be here.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about, and as you know, in our podcast that we focus a lot in the terms of the soft skills, and this podcast is focused on a lot on people who are actually work a lot in the technical field for like software development. A lot of them are already kind of reach out with some questions in terms of that to ask you, and in terms of the topic of agility and Scrum as well. I want to ask you, since you're the founder and the creator of Scrum, I want to start with your background, because you were West Point grad, you were in the military. Why did you decide to have a military career?
Well, I always knew for some reason when I was a kid, even when I was 8 years old, I knew I was going to go to West Point. So it turned out I actually did get in. Then towards the end of my 4 years at West Point, at that time, 10% of the class would go into the Air Force. The Air Force used to be the Army Air Corps. So West Point had always sent people into the Army Air Corps, and they started to decrease that when the Air Force Academy started graduating students, but they still let a few people in. And so the Air Force was recruiting. I told them, if you make me a fighter pilot, I'll switch services and join the Air Force. They would do that. So I spent 11 years mainly flying F-4 Phantoms, the reconnaissance version, but also F-101 fighter aircraft. So that's my experience, and it's directly relevant to Scrum because the military experience is actually the operational aspects of Scrum, understanding rapid response, agile responses to situations, agile planning, responding to change. All of that is burnt into muscle memory in a fighter pilot, right? And also John Boyd's OODA loop. Colonel John Boyd changed the whole thinking about military strategy based on his pilot experience. And he taught all the war colleges, and particularly the Marines, has adopted his, what he called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. How do you approach a situation? How do you respond quickly? How do you change your approach to get a competitive advantage? This is critical for particularly the product owner in Scrum. So all of that is baked. The burn down chart is how do you get on a glide path in an airplane to land it right at the end of the runway. All that comes out of the military. Even the sticky notes on the wall. I started doing that at West Point, and it had amazing effects in creating self-organizing teams. So that was my first career, military.
Yeah. But that's very interesting that in terms of how those parallels of how that influence the work that you developed and that you do now. In your book, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, that you describe how confronting or working in a work environment that had that kind of project management mentality of developing things in an extended period of time and planning everything perfectly ahead and then delivering a product at the very end and the failures of that. So how was What was the trigger, I guess, for to start creating or to develop the Scrum framework?
Well, there were several steps. One is my last tour in the military was I was a professor of mathematics at the Air Force Academy, and I was completing a PhD at the University of Colorado in the medical school. And as I approached the end of my tour at the Air Force Academy, the medical school hired me to run a big grant. And that grant involved supercomputing, modeling the human cell, trying to figure out what caused cancer. That led to a deep understanding of complex adaptive systems, which is the theory behind Scrum. But it also, I worked with some of the leading technical people at Bell Labs because of the tools and technology they were using. I imported to the university. So all of that thinking came to a point where a big banking company came by the university one day. They said, you guys have all the knowledge, but over at the bank we have all the money. And they made me an offer that my wife couldn't refuse. Just a junior professor.
Yeah.
And so I wind up at the bank. Well, they made me vice president for advanced systems, which was effectively the CTO for all the banks that they were running. They were running 150 banks all over North America. And I was mainly focused initially on the technical strategy, but as I looked at the projects, they were all late. And I went into the CEO's office one day and I said, Ron, have you noticed all your projects are late? And he said, yeah, every morning at least 4 or 5 CIOs or CEOs call me up. And he said, they scream at me. And I said, well, it's not getting any better. Every time they're late, the managers have more meetings, more reports. It makes it even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm a mathematician, I actually showed him a Gantt chart, and I mathematically proved to him that the Gantt chart would always make every project late.
Interesting.
And he was like, whoa, what should we do?
Yeah.
And I said, we need a completely different model of working. We can't fix the whole bank at once. Let's take a business unit. Everybody in the business, let's take the business unit that's losing the most money and introduce a new model. And that basically had all the aspects of what a today part of Scrum. It had a product manager who was acting as a product owner. It had a sprint planning. It had a sprint backlog. It had 1-week sprints. It had a burn down chart. All of that I booted up right away. But Scrum, the formalizing Scrum, calling it Scrum, didn't happen until 10 years later at a company called Agile. And really the trigger for that, this is directly related to soft skills, I think. I was on the advisory board for a nonprofit who was doing microenterprise lending in South America. And they were lending hundreds of millions of dollars to people. Most of them were so poor they couldn't feed their kids. And they get a group of people together, and then they talk about, okay, if each of you had a small business plan and we loaned you €25, what could you do with it? And when everybody had a plan, they'd loan them the money, and then they'd get together regularly, kind of check in. And when everybody paid back the loan, then they talk about how to scale the business plan, and they'll loan them another €25. So, and they got amazing results. I mean, like a woman who couldn't feed her children, 3 weeks later, maybe she says, okay, with €25, I'll buy a sewing machine, I'll start making dresses, I'll start selling them in the town square. 3 weeks later, she's got enough to feed the kids. And not only that, she's got a little extra for clothes. And so because kids can't go to school without clothes, now that she can put clothes on them, they can actually go to school. And now our business is scaling up, right? 6 months later, the woman is building a new house for her family. And I was so stunned, really, by the effectiveness of that. It's kind of a team-based approach. I came back from a lunchtime meeting in the advisory committee to my team at the software company.
Yeah.
I said, I've noticed that, you know, you guys are always late, and and you're working nights and weekends, and management thinks you're really bad developers. You're under a lot of pressure. I asked them, how long has that been going on? And every single person on the team said, as long as they were in software development, they were under this pressure, always being late, always being bad developers, always. And I said to them, you know, the people in South America, they don't have shoes. You have shoes. But you remind them of them because you have no software. You're like a poor person that has no software and so constantly getting beat up. So I said, you know, I think if we tried something different, just like the woman that could build a new house in 6 months, we'd have so much great software that the management and the customers would ask us to actually slow down, and then we could take back our life. You know, we could spend time with our family. We could have more. We could have some dignity and respect. I said, "Do you want to try it?" And they thought about it for a minute. You know, they said, "You know, we got nothing to lose. Why not?" And that was the turning point that marks in my mind the creation of Scrum. That started it.
That's wonderful. What I really like as well is because it's always about it, its own quote unquote simple approach, it seems, to complex problems. Because, and you have talked in the book about like teams that have had great talent. So it's not a matter of hiring the best people, but it's how people working together and kind of touching base regularly. Is that
Right.
would that be like the key, I guess, for Scrum?
Exactly. Scrum is about just regular people working together and doing great things.
That's great. Now, with the popularity, it seems that a lot of people are talking currently about agility and they want to kind of sprinkle agile in their projects. Do you see any misconceptions about agility or the Scrum framework in organizations?
Okay, well, there's huge misconceptions because if you look at industry data from the Standards Group, they've been collecting data on millions of projects for over 20 years. 58% of Agile teams are late, over budget, or can't deliver anything at all.
Wow.
And so these people are calling themselves Agile, but they're Agile in name only. I mean, and basically they're unable to really deliver. And that means that they're doing something that's just making it impossible for it to work. And when you go in and talk to them, they have all kinds of misconceptions. And in the United States, for the Department of Defense, it is the law that all IT projects must be agile. The Department of Defense appointed a board of distinguished people in industry called the Defense Innovation Board. And they wrote a paper that went viral on the internet called Detecting Agile BS. In there they say, okay, we're getting all these proposals, defense proposals from vendors, but a lot of them is just total nonsense. So here's how you can detect the nonsense. Number one, can they deliver working product to real end users every iteration, including the first iteration? If they can, they're agile, and if they're not, it's agile BS.
That's a good metric.
20 questions, you know. So agility is not about saying you're agile. Agility is about actually delivering and doing it in a way that is really rewarding for the people. So as I say, when we look at today, almost every major company is undergoing an agile transformation because business technology is changing so fast and it's so competitive that people need to change their way of working. And 53% of the agile transformations, according to the latest survey by Forbes magazine, did not meet the expectations of management. which is almost the same number of agile teams that don't work, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
now
yeah.
we're seeing agile BS at scale. Okay, so that's the area. Mainly where I'm working today is to how to help whole organizations actually get this in a way that actually really works for them.
Do you consider that perhaps it's something could be team dynamics, or are there any, aside from having that great talent in a team, that is there any individual skills or kind of considerations that should be taken in order to work effectively in an agile team?
Well, there's working as a team is always challenging, and if you look at great sports teams, I mean, Scrum comes from rugby. Okay, so look, if you look at great rugby teams, the great rugby team captains are really legendary characters because they can inspire the teams to great performance, right? And how do they do that? And this is the Scrum Master, of course, in Scrum. How do they do that? Well, first of all, they stand up for the team. They block for the team. They speak for the team. They encourage the team, and the team is ready to get in there with them, shoulder to shoulder, and move it forward. So that ability for a Scrum Master is really important. And then if you look at the team, I mean, I've had many people, rugby players, in my classes, Scrum classes, and they say,
Interesting.
in rugby, you're all arms linked in the Scrum formation, and when the ball is put into play, is a huge crush, and you have to be really positioned exactly in the right way, and you have to trust that every other team member will support you physically, or if you are, particularly if you're a person, a short person, you can get crushed, you can get really injured. And so this ability to link up, synchronize with the team, and trust that everyone is going to support you so you can get through is critical. And the team leader, the Scrum Master and Scrum, needs to help coach the teams to work in this way. And of course, there are always personal dynamics. So figuring out how to overcome that is a major job for both the team and the Scrum Master and the product owner for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen any evolution of, or actually, have you proposed or implemented any evolution or any changes throughout the years since Scrum was implemented that are significant?
Well, initially, when we formalized Scrum in the beginning, it was benchmarked against other processes, and only when it went 10 times as fast as traditional processes did we actually say, okay, this is what Scrum is. And so Scrum is a technology that is 10 times as fast. So it's very hard to make it go 20 times as fast, but maybe we'll figure that out someday. So mainly the problem has been, how do you train people so that they know how to go 10 times as fast? And we found that it's very difficult for people. It's like, how do you win? How do you consistently win the soccer match and get the World Cup? Okay, it's a similar kind of thing. So we know we've had to learn, we've had to significantly upgrade our training in the last few years. And we've also upgraded the Scrum Guide, try to get people focused more in the right way. So, for example, we had a big problem with the whole idea of servant leadership and self-organization. People were completely misinterpreting that. Oh, I'm a servant leader. I don't have to do anything. I just bring the team coffee, right?
That's
No.
a great
So,
role.
so we changed the terminology. Now we say it's a leader who serves. So leadership comes first, and then you bring them coffee, right? And self-organization, a lot of developers would say, oh, I'm self-organizing, and they were doing something that was undermining the team's ability to deliver. So they were self-organizing to destroy the team, basically. And so we had to change that term to self-managing, okay, to try to get people to understand what we mean. Because the whole idea of self-organization comes from complex adaptive systems theory, which is what I was working on in the medical field. And a complex adaptive system is an intelligent system that's trying to self-organize to get around a problem to achieve a goal. So the average developer was completely misinterpreting that. They didn't realize, oh, there is a goal. There is a goal for the team. The product owner has a sprint goal, and the only reason you self-organize is to get to the sprint goal faster. That's self-organization. But it's
Yeah,
hard to get them to understand that. They say, oh, self-organization means I can do whatever I want. No.
exactly. Yeah.
So again, so from a soft skills point of view, explaining to people in a way that they can actually do it, that has been a huge challenge. And there's been constant upgrades to the Scrum Guide, constant upgrades to the training. And yet we still have 58% of the Scrum teams that can't deliver today. So we have a huge amount of work to do.
And I must ask you, because what I've seen in a lot of Scrum teams as well is the kind of the tools like Jira and others. What are your thoughts about the tools that are kind of used to organize Agile teams?
Well, the best tool over the years has been proven to be sticky notes on a wall. There's no better tool. But today, where we have so many remote teams, we need an electronic tool. Jira has overwhelming market share. They have about the same percentage of the tool market as Scrum has of the Agile market. 70. And my team uses Jira at Scrum Inc. And in fact, the whole company has recently said, okay, everybody's going to use Jira so we can get consistent data and consistent picture from every team. So you have to have it in a distributed environment, a remote environment like we're working in today. You have to have them. And so the goal is to get something that is as close to sticky notes on a wall as possible. Something that is as simple and easy to use as sticky notes on a wall.
Now, what's a good first step if organizations, either in the DoD or that may not be necessarily software development centric, what's a good first step to start approaching or becoming more agile in terms of what is a good first step to take?
Well, the book you mentioned, Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice Work in Half the Time, has been very useful because we put in there all the things we're doing around the coaching and training that we're doing now to help teams. And I recently had someone in one of my trainings from Apple, and she said to me, Jeff, do you know why Apple always meets the States? And I said, no, why? She said, because we do Scrum by the book. And of course, I was interested. What book is that? Said the red book, Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice Work at the Time. So, Apple is doing a lot of things besides software. It's mostly hardware and lots of other stuff. So that is a really good place to start. I've had people from all over the world just read that book and then start and be successful.
Absolutely. It has a lot of great information because it's narrated in terms of providing specific examples. And it's, I like one of the things that I really, that kind of stick with me in the book is in terms of, it's not the approach of just failing quickly. It's about delivering fast and giving that value to customers. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that's another whole challenge. Failing fast, people can easily misinterpret that. What we want to do is get to success as fast as possible. So to do that, we want to take small risks in short intervals. So any one interval may fail. But the goal is to do that in a way that you're successful. And sometimes developers can say, well, Agile is all about failing fast, and we've failed every sprint for the last 2 years. No.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking with you, and I'm certainly recommend our listeners to read the book, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, because yeah, it was very great advice to get started with, or to kind of refresh the knowledge in Scrum and remind what's really important. So thank you so much.